What's going on, tactical buddies? Will Sherlin again with Gutter Fighting Secrets. So today's question comes from Jaybird196. You're asking, bro, German hand-to-hand combative training during World War II, what was it like? You also specifically asked if they were doing anything to counter the gutter fighting or close combative training that the Americans and Brits were so heavily involved with training our guys in during that Second World War. So I did some research for you, bro, and this is what I came up with. Before we dive into it, I want to say this is one of the best questions I've gotten so far, and I enjoyed learning about it. So with that being said, stand by, mother flowers. Let's take a look at it. So what type of hand-to-hand system was the Wehrmacht teaching? Wehrmacht is German for self-defense force, so if I say that from now on, you'll know what it means. Pardon me, guys, mein Deutsch is nicht sehr gut. I haven't studied German since freaking high school, and it's been a long time. I won't attempt to speak any more German from here on out. Screw those crowd bastards anyways. But I just want you guys to know for your reference, if I slip up and say Wehrmacht or whatever, then that's what I'm talking about. So what type of hand-to-hand combative system was the German army teaching? My research actually is surprising. It says really very, very limited, if any at all. It was probably basic boxing and wrestling, and the lessons were very few. Now, that might seem surprising to some of you guys out there that the fierce German army was not teaching their guys how to close with and kill the enemies, with knives and hands and stuff like that. But if you really think about it, it kind of makes sense. The German army felt very superior in many ways. They had superior tactics, superior equipment, superior weaponry, superior machinery, superior officers in their minds, and it just in their minds they were a superior people, right? Like that was their whole deal. Master race, superior freaking people, all that bullshit. So that's kind of how they were thinking. I guess it's not really surprising that they didn't feel the need to train their guys in empty-hand combatives. Now, when I say empty-hand combatives, that's basically the premise of like you don't have your rifle on you, you don't got your bayonet, like it's going hand to hand. You're fighting mano a mano, and you're going to need to use your hands to kill the other guy somehow, or at least stay alive, right? So the German army did not freaking go into this much. Now, contrary to that, on the other side of the pond, the Americans and Brits were big about empty-hand combatives. We were teaching our guys a lot of really good stuff, and eventually guys like Fairburn and Applegate would come and offer their services, and we all know, obviously, the story goes from there. But the German army wasn't big on it. The American Marines were huge on it. The British Royal Commandos, their version of the Marines, were really big on it. Our army was big on it. Like, our guys were getting trained well in hand-to-hand combatives compared to the Germans. My research says that in their basic training, the Germans' basic training, they touched on it. So they probably learned a few tricks from like World War I about, kick them in the balls and bring them down by the head this way. And probably also like, how to stop a knife a couple of different ways, that type of thing. But they were probably doing a lot of boxing and wrestling based stuff. You can go back, it's neat, on YouTube and watch our guys, the American guys from World War I being trained on hand-to-hand combatives back then. And it was very much boxing based for the striking and wrestling based for the grappling, and then mixed with some judo or street fighting type stuff, and also some like rip his gas mask off and freaking kick him in the balls and that type of thing. They probably would have gotten some stuff like how to pounce on the guy when he's in the prone position or some crude stuff, but they really didn't go into it much at all. They weren't trying to make them effective hand-to-hand fighters. They were trying to have perfect rifle drills and train them on the AT, the anti-tank weapons, and really train them on all that technology and get them ready for the practicalities of modern warfare. Not so much, crude, fight them with your hands and that type of thing. Now, a lot of German soldiers would have carried knives, but they would have been their own personal knives. They wouldn't have been issued. The German army did not issue fighting knives that I'm aware of. But it was kind of a German tradition that, these guys probably would have carried a knife, something they brought from home. I believe the SS did issue daggers and knives and stuff, whether it was more of a ceremonial thing or part of your standard kit, I'm not sure. But the German army, the Wehrmacht, did not issue a fighting knife. So whether or not these guys would have had some knife training, I'm not sure about that. I can't find anything to say that they actually did. They probably would have learned along the way a few places to stab and a few techniques with it, but nothing crazy. They were, however, issued e-tools or entrenching tools or like a little folding shovel. They probably would have had a few crude techniques to go ahead and smash someone with that, although it doesn't take, freaking hours of training to learn how to smash someone in the face with a gosh damn shovel. But whether or not they would have had, maybe A class on, strike him in the knee and then come back and chop him in the neck here with the edge of it, probably. But I'm not finding anything to say that they unequivocally did or did not. Now, here's something that I'm finding quite interesting is they obviously issued bayonets at some point to soldiers. The K98 bayonet was for the Mauser rifle, which they carried, right? But I've been searching and I haven't found any training that they would have received for sure on the bayonet. They probably did get some training, similar to what we had, like charge at the freaking stuffed dummy and bayonet it a few times and then run past and bayonet another one. But I can't seem to find much on German Army bayonet training. I found cool videos on YouTube about American and British bayonet fighting and training, but I have not found anything to say that the German Army really put much emphasis at all into training their guys how to fight well with a bayonet. On the other hand, the Americans and Brits, certainly the Americans, especially towards the middle of the war, were really putting a lot of emphasis on learning how to fight with the bayonet. I've heard it said the Japanese really favored the bayonet charges and bayonets, so that's probably why towards more of the middle of the war that we were ramping up our guys to learn how to fight well with the bayonet. But I just don't think that the German army was placing much emphasis on those bayonets. Although, like I said, obviously they made the K98 bayonet for the Mauser rifle. Whether or not they issued those bayonets and it was a standard part of their kit, I don't know. I haven't been able to find that out. But I don't think that they were getting much training on, parry and then thrust and then footwork and this and that and this. But what I did come up with was this quote from a Russian general talking about the Germans. And let's see, Marshal Timorodchenko told his men the Germans' chief strength lay in their technical skill and in their equipment. The German soldier, he said, was inferior to the Russian in man-to-man combat and became nervous and timid when fighting at night or in the great forest and marshes. In this sort of warfare, the Russian was the better soldier. End quote. Now, you'll hear this from other first-hand accounts that when it came to getting into hand-to-hand combat, that the German soldiers were cowardice or timid, or they didn't really know how to fight well because they, probably hadn't been trained on it well. It said that when it came to hand-to-hand combat with the Germans, at least for the average grunt, the average line soldier, the average Wehrmacht dude, that they just weren't good hand-to-hand fighters. Now, obviously, in contrast to that, I have heard it said, and legend says, that the SS were pretty fearsome warriors. Whether they got extra hand-to-hand combat training, I'm not sure. Throw it in the comments below if you do know for sure. But, obviously those guys were they were crazier. They were more given warrior ethos, and they were just more indoctrinated. And I think a lot of them also came from like the Hessian soldiers, and they were drawn from more of a warrior lineage anyway than your average German line soldier who was probably like 16 to 18 years old and freaking went through his, 16 weeks of basic training, if that, and then just thrown out there and said, go fight. Now, on that note, talking about the SS, I'm finding something here that says they allegedly received training in judo or jiu-jitsu. So that's not surprising. So the following is what I learned from really diving deep into this. Here is part of a German hand-to-hand combat training manual published in 1943. Let's see, dagger or spade defense against high or low attack, unarmed combat, enemy with helmet, enemy without a helmet, defense by pushing the head, liberating from clasp by arms, hit the genitals, drive the enemy to the knee, defender breathes in while losing the clasp, drop to the ground, lower the leg of the enemy, defense from to be in chancellery. That must be a German translation, or from German, or bad translation. Turn back the head of enemy with the left arm while raising the standing leg. Push the head against the ground or against a hard material, right? Okay. So freaking drive his head into something. Some techniques when attacked in the lying position. That's like 5 things. That's ridiculous. So these guys were really given a very, very, very limited amount of unarmed combat training, at least according to this 1943 German Wehrmacht hand-to-hand combat training manual. This is one. They got two methods of disarming a dagger. They got one, two, three. They got 3 methods of crude unarmed combat. They got one for like a bear hug defense, another very crude method of smashing the guy's head into the ground when grappling, and some combat techniques, like I said, for pouncing on the guy when he's lying. I'm prone. This is ridiculous, but this is what they were getting. Very, very abbreviated, just ridiculously abbreviated stuff. Now, something else that is kind of interesting to me is one technique that they were showing a lot of their guys, at least towards the middle of the war, was kind of a chin jab type deal that was a little bit different. Instead of using the chin jab where you drive up and into the opponent's chin and using your fingers to claw into the eyes, it was more like almost like a spot grip or something, and you would go into the nose, up and into the nose. So it was like basically kind of a weird looking palm strike up into the nose. And these were like just very crude things that they were getting. It wasn't anything serious. Our guys got way, way more. So it's not surprising that when our guys or the Russians came in contact with these guys hand to hand, that they were kind of cleaning the floor with them. These guys weren't trained well at all. And if that's what they were getting, then that's not surprising. Now, Jay Bird, going on to your question about were they doing anything specifically to counter the type of hand-to-hand combat that we were teaching our guys, the gutter fighting. So gutter fighting really, when it was being employed, was taught to like special forces. It was like kind of the elite soldiers, and then also spies. When I say spies, I mean like indigenous people who we would bring to places like Camp X and train them there and then send them back behind enemy lines. The hand-to-hand combat that they were getting, it was very serious stuff, but it was also fairly simple stuff. It was more like meant for if you're stopped by a German soldier, how to dispatch him quickly, take him out of the fight, and get the hell out of there, with your life and with your documents and with your, intelligence that you have. I don't think that when our guys were captured that it was a really concern to the Germans what type of hand-to-hand combat we were getting. I don't think that they were being tortured to say, what type of hand-to-hand combat are you learning? I don't think it was that relevant or important to the Germans. And again, you have to remember the Germans were kind of arrogant anyway, so they weren't putting a lot of emphasis on training their guys in that stuff. But gutter fighting was always originally intended for like a quick dispatching of troops, or also like sentry removal, that type of thing. Obviously, Fairburn had a huge martial arts background, and Mr. Applegate, Rex Applegate as well. He was more, I think, with the pistols, close quarter pistol craft and stuff like that. But these guys offered their services to us to be able to boost our hand-to-hand combat abilities and give specifically elite troops the skills that they would need behind enemy lines. I know that it did start trickling down to more of the line soldier, the American grunt, so to speak, as the war progressed, but it wasn't the type of thing where it was really so much of a concern, although it was classified information. So with that being said, the fact that it was classified information probably didn't leave too many Germans really widely aware of it anyway to be able to counter it. Quick fun tip, I was talking with Bill Wolf, the expert, the world's leading expert on gutter fighting, and kind of the last lone surviving guy who was taught by that direct lineage from Fairburn. And he was telling me that he got an opportunity to well, he may or may not have had an opportunity to talk to somebody about what type of hand-to-hand combat the CIA is learning today. And so, from what he told, is that this stuff today obviously is classified what kind of hand-to-hand combat they get as well, but it supposedly kind of goes back to what Fairburn was teaching back then. And it was classified back then, and it still is, so we don't really know, but I thought that was interesting that it's very similar still. But to get back to the point, I don't think that they were actively trying to counter it. Otherwise, we would have seen more systems of hand-to-hand combat, on the German end. I was really trying to do a lot of research, and I didn't come up with much, honestly, man. I thought I would come up with more about, specific bayonet drills for the German army, specific ways that they were being trained to fight hand-to-hand. I kind of got the impression that they would have been better trained in this stuff, but it does make sense that they weren't, and that they more relied on squad tactics, small unit tactics, that type of deal, artillery, freaking hand grenades, and marksmanship and superior technology. That is kind of a German mentality back then, certainly, and even today, to be very precise about things. So, with all that being said, there's really not much more to say about it. They were trained poor as shit on hand-to-hand combatives. We were being trained pretty well in the American Army, and certainly in the American Marines. Our special forces were kind of just coming into play. Like, we were really developing our special forces. Obviously, the Green Berets kind of came out of the OSS, so we didn't have much of a special forces contingency. I know that like the airborne was a thing, and they were getting taught a lot of judo-based stuff. So a lot of what they were learning was boxing, wrestling, and judo, or Japanese jiu-jitsu. So I'm gonna cut it there. I mean, there's not much else to say. They didn't do much as far as hand-to-hand combatives training. It would have been interesting to find out more, because they are very precise people. So I'm sure if they had come up with something better, that it would have been very good. But that's just a shame that they didn't. But screw them anyway. I'm glad they didn't, because fuck the Nazis. So, guys, that's my whole World War II history on German hand-to-hand combative training. Like I said, I wish I could have given you more, but there's just not much more to be said about it. Until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense, guys. Now, if you have anything else before I close this out, if you have anything else, like if any of you are historians out there, or anybody's got some actual, factual information, plop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it, because this is something that deeply fascinates me. Obviously, with a freaking YouTube channel called Gutter Fighting Secrets, anything that I can learn about the original gutter fighting and then World War II combatives in general, always down to learn more. I'm not an expert, but I do definitely enjoy learning about this stuff. I thank you for your time, guys. If you're so inclined, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. We're always trying to come up with new and better and greater content and information for you guys. If not, then hey, listen, maybe we'll catch you on the next one. So I'm going to see you guys in the next video. All you subscribers, thank you for checking me out. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing, and I will see you later. Cheers, mother flowers.
This is the Armed Forces Radio Service.